Hi, everyone. I'm Dan Albers, and welcome to This Week in Anderson on the Big Eye Sports Podcast on USBN Sports. And as always, I'm joined by my co-host, Steve Ellis. And Steve, I'll tell you what, I'm really excited for our next guest, Kirk Kiessling. I got to play with him baseball early, but you and I got to see it firsthand, athletic-wise, what he did at McNick HOF High School. We got to see it on the basketball court. I got to see it on the football field. This guy is a phenomenal athlete, Hall of Famer at McNick, and I can't wait to catch up and hear all these stories.
Well, I always looked up to him just because he was left-handed, same as me. But I'll tell you this, he was a part of an unbelievable class at McNick, probably top 5 classes ever, across the board for all the sports. And you can say what you want. This guy played 3 sports, so he was the anchor of that class.
Oh, absolutely, no doubt about it. So it's going to be great to hear all these stories. So as we said, joining us is Kirk Kiessling. Kirk, thanks for joining us.
Thanks, gentlemen. It's a pleasure, an honor, certainly. And I was very, not certainly as good as you mentioned, but
I don't know about that.
Unless I'm telling my kids.
Absolutely.
I don't know about
good
that.
Stuff.
I just remember, like I said, watching you on the basketball court, on the football. I mean, just phenomenal. So let's go back to the early days before we get into high school, and let's talk about growing up in Anderson. What that was like for you growing up as a kid and playing sports. Talk a little bit about that.
Absolutely, and I think we'll get a mutual chuckle out of some of these because we were teammates. And we just looked in the book, 1975 and 1976, and
the old Summit Tigers.
I believe it now.
Yes, and so and he did really hit a bomb. It's in the Forest Hill Journal. My God rest her soul. My mother kept a scrapbook.
Listen, everybody. Hear that? I hit a home run. It's in the paper. And it's documented.
Absolutely,
we have a documentation.
It was at Wilson School. I remember it. I have a weird photographic memory. I can't remember to take the garbage out, but I can tell you that Dan Albert hit a bomb at Wilson School in 1976.
Oh boy, Danny.
About that.
I'm proud of you, man.
It was a legit bomb. It wasn't the dribbler back the pitcher that threw around.
4 airs.
You like that?
Yeah, it was a bomb.
So what was it like? What side of Anderson did you live on?
I lived on the. Unfortunately, I lived on the Turpin and Wilson side, right across Clough Pike. Even though Summit Estates was right across the street, and years later, I had a friend that used to call Summit Estates the Catholic ghetto because it seemed like 90% of IHM and 80%.
Exactly. That's right. Yeah, exactly.
Right. And there were so many kids all our age. It was really a great place to grow up. And you had Summit School and Juleps and Fireside and the little E-League park there. And so, in retrospect, you didn't know it. It was a great place to be a kid. And, and we really had some. When you look back at it, some dads that were just committed and coached for the right reasons. We really didn't get much daddy ball, what I always called when the kid, the guy whose kid is a shortstop or the quarterback, and hitting cleanup. We had guys who cared, and we're looking at that scrapbook over there.
God, it's amazing.
They just did it for all the right reasons and loved the kids in the game and tried to teach us.
You know what's funny about it is we're sitting there looking and we're like, so and so, like Billy Madden was on a team, and we could point them out. And Matt Bueller and Tony Bueller and all these guys that we played with. I mean, even though we're so long removed from it, you could picture them out in this picture when they were 70 years old.
Absolutely. And so when you think about the people that can be on your show that were far better than me, all the athletes that came out of Anderson Township that really did some amazing things. I mean, Richard Dotson won 22 games in the playoff year. And guys that you thought would make it. I thought, frankly, Joe Dayton was a heck of a better player than Jimmy Lawrence, and Jimmy hit a bomb.
Jimmy ended up playing
Pat Taylor, all those guys that came out of here, and there's a long, long list. And there's just some really great youth programs, and there were really good athletes here, and they got nurtured and grew. And
did you move around, or did you live in the same house?
Same house, and my father still lives in it, actually.
No kidding.
He moved here in 1970.
Okay.
He worked for General Motors and got transferred, and right across from what's now Julius Park North. And he's still there, plugging away. So we grew up there, and so luckily, though, for me, when they were dividing up the little ball teams, I was so close to Summit, even though I went to Wilson, and the whole rest of the team went to Summit. I was so close, they put me with the Summit kids, and so that's how I got to play with you guys.
So isn't that crazy how that dividing line there? I mean, it's like the equator or something.
Strange, yes, it really was. In that house,
you were closer to Summit, but yet you went to
Wilson.
Wow,
and closer to Anderson, frankly, than Turpin. And did for middle school.
Wow.
You went to Turpin Middle School?
I did. Yes.
Wow.
I did.
Did not know that.
I did not know that.
And so we were in IHM's parish, and I played CYO basketball through there, and Pat Stricker's dad was our coach, who also also was a great coach.
Yep.
And he was guidance counselor with Jerry Durger. And I was one of those guys who grew quick and young, and so I think they kind of nudged me to come that way.
Yeah.
I don't want to get coaching so high. He's retired now, but I'm sure some may frown upon the discussions we had. But it was nothing was given or promised other than an opportunity to work your ass off.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
So I transferred over. Actually, I got a lot of heat when I did leave Turpin to go over there.
I'm sure.
Wow, that's interesting.
Yeah.
That's like a whole other story.
It really is.
So when you were growing up, what sports did you play, whether it be Little League or going into middle school?
And that was the great thing about Anderson. You could do all three.
Yeah.
And there were seasons weren't divided. You didn't have to specialize then. And so we played, obviously, Little League baseball, and it was a great program. Winchell Smith ran District 5.
Winchell Smith, sure. Legend.
Side note, actually, on Winchell, again, another example of a guy caring about kids is that after our sophomore year in high school, especially the kids that did multi-sports, it was kind of hard to go play for the big Midland team, even if you could make it. And not saying I would have, because you're running off to basketball and basketball camp and football lifting, and they wanted to play 60 games a summer was hard.
Yeah.
So Winchell goes and he said, hey, I'll give me these McNick, Anderson, Turpin kids that are in that realm, and I'll take them and coach.
Really?
So Winchell coached us, and so Mike Benassi played, Bobby Geiser, Steve Flanagan, myself, and so he grabbed, Tommy Sizer pitched for Turpin, and so Chris Coldiron was on that team, so he grabbed...
He's a pitcher.
Yeah, so he grabbed all those kids, and so we were the kids, none of us were to get drafted, maybe Flanagan perhaps, but that were could be high school baseball players, and so we could play and played all summer, and we played 30 games instead of 60, but we all got to play.
Okay.
And it was great running from, a Midland baseball, game running fire in my jersey, because he got Midland to sponsor us. He got Joe to give him a set of uniforms.
Okay.
And the big Midland team and all the pitchers, so we'd lose, 14-12 because we could hit. We just didn't have many arms. But you're flying in the car, firing off your shirt, running to basketball gym to play open gym basketball.
Wow.
It was great.
That is awesome.
So I think I saw in your albums over here, you also played soccer when you were little.
We did. I went to football the one day, and I was too big. I was going to be over the weight limit.
Okay.
And my mother, I think, didn't want me to play, actually, in Rich. I was the baby. And so, she's like, well, it might be hard to do soccer and football, and you might want to try soccer. She was nudging me that way in retrospect, but I was like 4 pounds over, and I wasn't fat. I was just, I was tall.
Big boy, yeah.
And she's like, you're not going to diet. I'm not going to let him diet, because the coach mentioned it. And so I played soccer really all the way up. And
okay.
we had a great youth soccer program around here, too.
Right.
Billy Dayton and John. You see the guys in that picture.
Yeah.
Three-quarters of the guys on the team played in college.
So when did you switch over to football?
Not till I was a sophomore in high school.
Really?
Yes.
Huh.
And so McNick did not have soccer at the time.
Okay.
And I don't know why I got a bug. Maybe I should try that. Jerry Durger wasn't all that happy.
I would imagine not.
And so I went out, and I could run and I could catch. I couldn't block light if I stood in front of the window. Some of the guys I played with say I never did.
Yeah.
And then I played soccer, so I was a kicker and punter.
Okay.
And funny story on that is that because there weren't that many soccer players back then that played football, so I had the school records for a long time.
Okay.
And they weren't that great. I was just the only one who could do it.
Doesn't matter.
And Kevin Huber certainly broke the punting record.
Kevin, I would think.
So the kids mentioned, the kids like, Dad, are you as good as Kevin Huber? I'm like, no, kids. He got paid. He was good.
Yeah, paid. A little different.
Dad was not. So
well, sorry. So
I'm getting way ahead. I'm sorry, but
no, it's good.
No, it's all right. So obviously 3 sports going into high school. Mm-hmm. So football, basketball, baseball. So let's start off with basketball, because I want to get right to Coach Durger, and I want to hear about your playing days for Coach.
Absolutely.
And what kind of coach he was in practice, because I can just tell you firsthand. I was on the other end of the court wearing a different color uniform, and I was intimidated by him.
Yeah.
I respected him so much, and so I can imagine what it was like playing for him.
And truly love the guy, and especially as you look back, is that he would do the world for the kids.
Sure, I've heard that from 100 people.
And part of the deal when you come here, it's like, look, if you're going to come and play for me, he said the deal is you're playing for me because you don't want to be average. And I won't let you be average.
Yep.
And at times we'll have some one-way discussions where you're trending towards being average, or less than your talents let you, and I'm not going to let you do that.
Yeah.
And that's the deal. And so he would get after and yell at you where you didn't. If you wanted to play in college, he would work his tail off to get you there. And the endless time in the summer, he'd say, hey, meet me at the gym. We're going to go work on your shot for 2 hours.
Wow.
We're going to basketball camp. I got these 3 camps lined up, and he wasn't married. And so he'd say, hey, I'm going to go work the camp, and and you 4 guys come with me, and we'll spend all week doing basketball. Yeah. And he was just fantastic that way on his truly commitment and love for the kids.
So how hard were the practices? I mean, how intense and how physical were they?
I mean, they were hard, and he'd get after you. And I think in retrospect, he just wanted you to compete. Mm-hmm. And I think once, like any team, once he got us to compete on our own, and in retrospect, getting a fight. And I remember maybe the best story I heard, because it reminded me of this, is who was the guard for UC that came down from Akron with Bob Huggins?
Anthony Buford.
Yes.
Buford.
And so him talking about that when he was a senior and came down, really knew Huggins' system. He said he was having a bad practice. He started fighting, and that amped everybody up, because nowadays everybody freaks out.
Right.
A lot of pushing.
Just trying to right.
Nobody ever. It happens, and so I think in retrospect, I can remember Jeff Smith, who was a captain, God rest his soul, who unfortunately died of cancer, but still was a hell of a college baseball player. And I can remember Smitty getting in my face and jawing a little bit and starting something like that. And Pat and I would get after it, and we'd get after big games, that sort of thing. And so that's
crazy
intense. But once he got us to be intense, we coached in certain ways. He brought it up, and so coached ourselves is the wrong word, but we maybe stealing Huggins' line, I heard him talk about Kenny and Martin. He said, hey, when your best player is your best guy, you're going to do well.
Yeah.
And Dirk's tried to make us all best guys.
Well, I'm just going to feed off that real quick, because I think with us, with the Anderson, we'll get into that a little bit later, the Anderson-McNick rivalry was, you guys were so good, and that made it so much more intense for us. But then just that with Durger, too, I think for us, we wanted to win. We wanted to beat Durger, too. Not only beat you guys, but that just made the rivalry a little bit more intense.
It really is, and I think he made a difference, because I looked at the box score from our game, the second game when I was a senior and you were a junior, Steve, when you hit that halftime buzzer beater and got us all screamed. I do a photograph from. I'll bet money that you did that.
All right, I'll go with it.
I'll take the bet that you did that. I think at half or quarter, and we got reamed out about it. But the little lefty snake through coast to coast, and how the great Durger defense could allow this guy to do that. But look at that box score, and I looked in our, and so I think our scoring, Ramey had 17, Miller had 15, Smitty had about 15, I had 11, and almost a triple-double, and Stricker had 6 assists. So we were balanced. It was, you sacrificed it. Mike and Keith could really score, but they could have scored more, and we all perhaps could have. But look, you guys had some talent. I mean,
we did.
You had Tyber. I mean, those are great players.
Some good shooters.
Michael played. Billy kind of lost himself. Jimmy Bell was fearless.
So all right. So going back to Durger, I want to ask you.
If Durger had coached here, we flipped coaches. Would you guys have beaten us? Think about that. I'm not so sure if you wouldn't have.
Well, I'll tell you this. Just his intensity and what his I guess his style. So this is what I was going to ask you about. So if you think about Durger over the course of the past at McNick, the two things that come to mind are the defense, which you have to throw in taking charges, because McNick teams are very, very good at. And then if it got down to the last 2 minutes and the game was close, the game was over, because McNick would not only could close out games, but they were going to be a better free throw shooting team.
Agreed.
Is that right?
Absolutely. We'll talk defense first, and you're right. He played defense, would not play zone. In our practice shorts had defense across the back. And I will tell you one story, and this is maybe a response on the team doing this. We were playing at Turpin, maybe when I was a junior, and playing terrible. And we were up 20. We were going to beat them no matter what, and we're playing poorly. And he calls a timeout and yanks us out and yells at us, and we go back in, and 2 seconds later calls another one. We're still playing like crap, and he goes, I don't care, you're going to play like that, you just go play zone. And so, we were so poor, so we go out there, and I give Pat Stricker credit, who ended up being a captain, and he says, bullshit, I'm not supposed to cuss.
No, you're good. You're
sorry. He says, we're not doing it. And we all, we're not doing it. So we go back out, and we stay in man. And so Durger calls a timeout again. So it's our third timeout. 30 seconds. What the heck? I said play zone, and we said we're not doing it. And then he said, well, then if you're gonna play man, do it right. And we go out, and you look back. That's exactly what he wanted us to do, and we figured it out and did it. And so
cool.
So when the team will do that, you're going to be good.
That's incredible.
It really is.
That is incredible.
That is incredible.
Do you remember what his famous saying was? Because as a coach, I had learned this a long time ago from McNick people, and I would print it and I would give it to my players for the last 20 years.
You ready? So many. He would say, "Good, better, best. Never let it rest till the good are better and the better's best." And he wrote, it's when I was looking for stuff for Pat
I'm
Stricker,
glad you
who just went in the Hall of Fame last week, and I was looking through a bunch of stuff to try to find things for Pat, and I found that, and so when I went in the Hall of Fame, Coach wrote me a letter, and he wrote that, and he said, good, better, best, you never let it rest, and you are one of the, it was just, that's how he was.
How neat is that?
So I mean, Jerry cared about you. If you wanted to, if anyone of us would have said, if we were going to be a Division III basketball player, he would find the best place for you to go play.
Yeah, that's incredible.
He would call anybody and do anything for you to get you someplace to play.
Yeah, and I would explain it to my teams. This is from Coach Durgan McNick. This is his saying. It's not me.
Right.
And this is what it means.
Yeah,
it's so cool.
It really was. And so it was the hard-nosed defense and get after it, and you'd see him go up with lesser teams and win in Dayton because you'd get some of those more talented teams, but they're playing in the suburban league, playing 2-3 zones.
Right.
You get the ball when you want, you get your shot where you want, and all of a sudden they walk into a 12-8 McNick team that was playing an up in GCL schedule and could compete.
Yes.
So that was
always the case.
One. And the same with Chargers. I looked for this on Pat Stricker, and we were juniors. Pat took, I sent this to the athletic director. I said, this has to be a school record. Pat took 4 Chargers in that game in St. X.
No way.
And he actually...
I believe it.
He did. And so, and the great thing, he probably weighed 140 pounds.
Yeah, right.
So we did that, and now the next week, this is funny, is he earns a start, and we're playing Cleveland St. Ignatius, who's pretty good, and so they have a good point guard, and the guy picks Pat's pocket like 3 times in the first quarter. He gets benched, and so it's December time frame, and so after the game, Pat and his brother Mike and his dad are going to Memphis to see Notre Dame playing the Liberty Bowl.
Okay,
and so his brother knows what's coming, jumps in the back seat, so Pat gets the front seat next to his dad. So 8-hour drive to Memphis. Pat got coached up.
Oh wow!
After the game, Mike knows what's coming, jumps in the back seat.
Yeah, he knew.
8 hours home. Pat gets coached up.
Wow.
Man, I really wish we would have flew. So.
that is great. Talking about that with your those teams that you played, those great McNick teams back in the day. I know that you had like Pat Stricker and Ramey and all the guys that you've named, but I believe, was it your junior and senior that you went real far in state in basketball? Talk a little bit about both those junior and senior year.
Both those teams, that class was very good. Keith Miller, who played at Bellarmine, who had a best run this year. Keith could really score, and Keith's older brother Mark had been the player of the year when I was a sophomore, and he had, since we talked Jimmy Bell, you realize scorers aren't afraid to score or afraid to miss.
Right.
And when Keith had that, in retrospect, I probably said, maybe I was afraid to miss once in a while. And then Michael Ramey, he grew to be 6'8", and kind of grew into his body.
Yep.
And then as a junior, Joe Heller was a very good player.
Heller.
Yep. And who lives in Anderson area now, and played at St. Ambrose. He had a young birthday. In retrospect, he probably would have been in our class.
He
had a September birthday, and so he was young for his age. Oh man, if we had Joe, we would have been by feet.
Who else was in there? You had Timmy McLaughlin.
Timmy was on the team as well, and Dave Fallis was in our class, and so really all these Summit kids for the most part.
That's incredible, isn't it?
You really did. As if I counted as a Summit kid, because I was kind of a
you're right there.
I was kind of like a stepchild.
Knocked on the door.
And Stricker and Timmy and all lived right there.
Yeah.
And we used to joke you were on the wrong side of Northport, the right side. You were on the east side. Yes.
Yeah, I was on the good side. Well, let's talk about we kind of briefly discussed some of the times when Anderson and McNick played against you. They're always special memories for he and I because we both played on the football side of it for me, and then basketball together. And just the emotions that we had knowing that you guys were so good, and how fired up we get. Talk a little bit about the Anderson McNick on your side of it from the McNick side of it.
I think it was fantastic, and it was always the first football game of the year.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's right.
And really Anderson always had a lot of talent.
Right.
And so and when I was a freshman, I'll mention basketball and get back to football. They were city champs.
Right.
When I was a freshman, and you had Joe Dayton, who was kind of, because Billy's my age and I grew up with, so we'd play Joe on like 2-on-1 the driveway, and he'd kick the crap out.
Oh, yeah.
He was ruthless. He didn't give us a break,
Yeah, he's a machine.
And so he was sort of, idolized Joe. I wanted to And Danny Ferguson went and played UT Chattanooga.
Timmy Ferguson, Frank Brandy,
who's still around. Who was a heck of a player, and Coach Sander, and then Dunaway was on that team. And
Tony Dunaway and Ronnie Evans.
Yep. And so they got upset in the tournament by Byron Larkin. So Anderson was really good, and then in football they had a lot of talent. It just didn't seem to come together.
Right.
So when I was a sophomore, we had a pretty good class and beat them. When I was a junior, when I was a sophomore, it was really all seniors except for Steve Flanagan. I were 2 sophomores playing. And so when we came back when we were juniors, Anderson had a lot of talent. They were supposed to thump us, and whatever reason we jumped out early, and Jimmy Williams had a few sacks on Craig Bosey, and so we run kind of going away, but the lead up and the pep rally.
Oh, yeah.
Sure.
So
you couldn't cuss, but they'd all say kick A at the
Oh, yeah.
rally.
Yeah.
The hardcore Catholic teachers would be upset. And Durgan, those guys would love it.
Oh, yeah.
And all the kids do, they go, kick A. so that week, and then, you go to McDonald's afterwards, you can see all the same kids.
Yeah, everybody.
Yeah. Yep, and just
that's awesome.
You knew everybody, and I can remember, where Ty Burdick and I grew up, playing with each other, against each other. We kind of played he was an end, and I was not tight end and end, and we were opposite each other, and so you'd be in the game pushing and kind of cussing each other, and then afterwards, hey, we're going after the game.
Yeah.
It's really
I love it.
Yeah, and it was certainly cross-pollination of some of the McNick guys dating Anderson girls, and Anderson guys dating McNick.
Yeah,
so it was an inbred mess, or a heck of a place to be, or both.
Yes, it was.
As you know, so it was really a lot of fun, and playing at Brown Stadium, and it was just a really
kind of your home field there too.
It really was, yeah.
Because you guys didn't have a field back then.
So when I was coaching P, we had to go back. Hey kids, I scored some touchdowns, which nobody cared.
You went to McNick.
Nobody cared. Yeah, which the kids is nice coach. So football was whatever. So it was just a great rivalry. It was a great experience. The whole everybody was there. I can remember one of the games when I was a junior. It might have been the same night as the fireworks, and we're like, because anybody didn't come.
Yes, I remember that.
It was sold out, jam-packed, people there, and the buses pulling in.
We had a pep rally, and whoever the captain was, I forget who it was, would announce forget the fireworks, come to the football game. Because it was the timing of that.
I'm trying to think, who would that see? Was that Paul Christ? Maybe he would have been one of the captains.
Oh, when you were junior year?
Yeah, that year.
Junior year would have been. Who was that?
Rupert, Big Rupert was on that team. Probably Craig Bosey was the quarterback.
Pat Thatcher was on that team. And I'm trying to think who else was on that team back then.
Rupert, a transfer from Max, was playing DB. Kevin White was playing.
Kevin White was a captain.
Yeah.
Mark Reese was a junior playing nose guard.
Oh my gosh.
And
then juniors, you had Randy Cummings and Burdick, and all those guys were great athletes back in the day too. So
they really were.
Yeah, that was. Let's go on the flip side of it now with football. It's just amazing to me the run that you had for not only basketball but for football too. You guys, I believe, went to the state finals your senior year, but you had a really good team, and you were coached by George Markley, wasn't it?
Yes.
Talk a little bit about the experience of football and then Coach Markley.
George was very different than Coach Sturger, and George was as old school as they get, and he was very tough. In fact, I just saw him a few weeks ago. His grandson hit the buzzer beater, plays for Moeller basketball.
Oh, really?
No kidding.
And they hit a double overtime buzzer beater to beat St. X.
Oh, wow.
But I bumped into one of his other sons, and his other son, who was your age, Steve. He was telling me they're on a call, because George's down in Florida, and he's talking with the young boy's dad, and talking about, if they had a toughness contest on that team, I think old 2-4 there would finish about last. And he's, and grandma's on the phone, and she's yelling. I mean, that's how George was. He was all about toughness. If the bone wasn't sticking out, you weren't hurt. You didn't get stuff that you can't do anymore. But he was really tough. Was yes sir, no sir. And but when he showed up at McNick, when they had that run in the early 70s of, I think it was 71 or 72, they went 0 in football and didn't score a point, and went 0 in basketball.
Oh, wow.
And they still were going 0-10, 1-9, and he showed up from an assistant from Moeller, and they were 1-9 his first year, and then he started going right away, winning.
Yeah, right.
And because he was just toughness, and there was no excuse. There was no excuses, period.
Right.
And so he was tough. A lot of people hated him. At times, he was tough, but one of his things, we always played on Saturdays because we borrowed your stadium. Friday was pregame, and he'd come down the line pregame, he'd grab you by the face mask and go, who you going to beat? And you'd yell back, beat Anderson, beat Turpin, beat Purcell.
Yeah.
And, we were always smaller than everybody. We always had less players. We all played both ways. When I was a junior, I never left the field. I played tight end, defensive end. I was a punter and kicker, and I was on kick return.
Wow.
So I really would not leave, which you actually kind of liked.
Right.
But it was, it was guys, we have no choice. We got to compete. You got to be tougher.
Yep.
Right. And he demanded that. And then luckily for, my class had some really good football players. I was an athlete, not a football player.
Well, obviously. You guys went to the state finals.
Jimmy Williams was first team All-State nose guard. Gordy Massa, another Summit kid. Pat Stricker.
I remember. Was Brett Kelly?
He was a junior. He was
Brett Kelly.
He was a junior, and so when he played intermittently, he would have started 2 or 3 years any other year, but just the guys in our class were very good. Steve Bolger had been a Summit kid.
Yeah.
Joe Snyder, who still refs high school football.
Yep.
Joe won the city championship in CYO in the 100 meters, and he was probably the leading scorer in the city when we were seniors, and just really tough.
He These names, man. I tell you what.
And I still see Joe. Joe's still reffing. He reffed coached the flag football team over at St. Ursula. My daughters had gone there. They do a once-a-year flag football game to raise money for cancer research in honor of a student that had died of leukemia a few years back.
Okay.
And so Joe refs it every year for me, just helps us out. And
that's awesome.
Yeah, and he still grabs one of the guys from his crew, and he's still out doing it. Likes the game, and
I love it, man.
Wow.
That's
so just it's like anything. And you mentioned I was a part of the golden era of McNick.
Absolutely. We talked about that.
Yeah.
And benefit from that, just like you go, there's a whole lot of guys on that Steel Curtain Steelers team in the Hall of Fame.
Right.
Had they played in the 60s or the 80s, maybe not. And
right.
So it was worth, maybe you would have better stats, maybe not. But it was, you talked best memories. You asked me that was really all being a part of it. I'm getting goosebumps thinking about that. Just
you should.
How much fun that was.
Yeah.
Part of that and being on the world where you think you're, the invincible.
Invincible, yeah. What was that, the state championship? I'm sorry, I don't remember. What was the final? Who'd you play? And what was
the Elyria Catholic, and we got smoked.
Did you really?
We really did. And so we were this is probably something George didn't do with scout enough. We weren't really prepared, and they had scouted us.
Okay.
And then one thing that did hurt us, they were probably going to beat us anyway. They were very good. They had a guy that he set like 4 state records against us running back and UC.
Okay.
And they had another guy that went to UC and played, but in the first, Rod Bachman was in your class. Was a junior.
Sure. Yeah.
Rob was our leading, a heck of a football player. So he blows his ankle about the third play, and so that hurt. Not that it would have made a difference, but they were an up the middle running team, and he was a run stuffer, and so it was there. And then they ran back a punt for a touchdown. The guy set a record for like the longest pass from scrimmage. It was like 90 yards. It was like a screen pass about 4 yards, and he ran 90.
Wow.
So we got beat by like 40-24 or something.
Really?
Yeah. And so I think we could have played better if we played it again.
Yeah.
But they were.
But you made it there.
Yeah.
And was Oaks the quarterback?
He was. He had a couple pick sixes, and so Mark McDonald was the quarterback.
I was going to say
Mark broke his hand.
Yeah.
Oaks he played, and I think in retrospect was probably a little nervous.
Yeah.
And but they were good. The kid that had a pick six, went to UC and played. So it was they were a good team, and they were disciplined, and they had seen a lot of film on us more than we did on them. So they were certainly better prepared as well.
That's great. I mean, that's just to experience all that.
It was fun. I'd like to have that one. Maybe we could have played. It would have been a little bit respectable out there.
Yeah. So let's move on to baseball real quick.
Sure.
Who was the coach there?
The Steve Josworth, who had been the AD.
Yes.
So Steve was he was an elder guy, and he had played baseball at Xavier, and he got drafted by the Pirates. Steve could hit, and he knew the game.
Okay.
And he was good friends with Basiliga from Turpin.
Yeah.
And so Steve was a kind of a West Side baseball guy and brought that demeanor to McNick, and so they were good because of that.
All right.
And in fact, his son, little Stevie, they won a state championship in like 98 or 99 or so. McNick, and Stevie Jr. was the pitcher.
Right.
And was a.
I remember that now.
Yeah, he was he wasn't a flamethrower. No, he just knew how to pitch, and he was tough.
So what did you play?
I played outfield, first base. Like you couldn't hit a lick in retrospect. So I would describe. Since you mentioned earlier, is that. In retrospect, I was an athlete. I was not a football player, a basketball player, or a baseball player. I could run a little bit and move, and that probably, I was left-handed.
You had a couple of things. So you had size and you're left-handed, which I think is not, a lot of people have that.
Correct. So I played outfield, played some first base. I'd hurt my arm when I was about 12 or 13 a little bit, so I didn't have an average arm after that. And so if I got lucky and ran into one, I could hit, or I could leg out a ground ball to short because I was fast. But I was not a pure baseball player. I certainly wasn't a pure basketball player either. I could jump.
I don't know, man.
But there's and even in football, I was I was the sweatbands tight. I was not.
But I mean, you got to give some credit.
Absolutely.
You're playing 3 sports and starting as a sophomore in all 3 sports. Was there any thoughts, or did you have anybody talk to you possible about playing in college anywhere?
You really just football and basketball, and so you kind of went through kind of the recruiting piece, got hot and heavy with the Naval Academy, and then probably too immature to commit for 9 years, and then I wasn't going to play, and so and having seen went through the recruiting process with my son, is that seeing it in different ways and how the game has changed is that if my son and I had been flip-flopped in the way the game is now and then, it'd probably been better for me as a finesse tight end when you're still running double tight and they want something 240. That's another tackle out there. If I was more of a, on the edge, I would have been the tight ends of today that you see the guys that don't block anybody and go out. That was more me. And so that would have been better for me. And so it was hot and heavy and kind of, we'd go to a lot of different places, the MAC schools, they talk to you and you get the interest, and the recruiting piece is different now, and then ended up wasn't going to play, and then Pat Stricker was going to Wilmington College to play. He was just come with me and check it out, and the Bengals were there, and I'm like, Dave, why don't you get in someone up? Maybe I will give it a shot. So I went up and ended up playing up there.
Did you really?
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Oh, wow.
So
That's
good.
good.
Tight end and a kicker, and so I ended up being an academic All-American a couple of years, and
that's awesome.
So it was.
There it is. That's awesome.
So
that is incredible.
It was fun. So glad I did it. So.
Wow, that is really cool.
Pat and I were roommates together and played up there.
That's
Pat
crazy.
had a nice career as well, and it was a good program back then. It's terrible now. But the Bengals trained up there, and they had a coach who had been there about 20 years, and when Bengals got equipment and things,
sure.
So they had a tradition. And then that was the coaches were from Northeast Ohio, and so they recruited up there pretty well. There was no Mount St. Joe or
Thomas
More, so they did pretty well in the Cincinnati market, and then in Mount Union was rolling. So then the coach left, and then you get those programs here. The Mount Union gets rolling. Northeastern kids are going up there, so they're never going to be good again.
So, and it really hasn't changed much up there.
It's not.
It's the same gym and same facilities. I think it's probably why the Bengals left.
I think so too.
Yeah, there's no doubt.
Where are they at now? Georgetown.
They went to Georgetown. No, I think they come back and they just do it at the facility.
I think you're right.
That's true. That's right. You're right.
And the last labor agreement, there was really no double sessions, so so they just do it here.
That used to be the day going back there to watch you get training camp and go there all day and all morning. That was incredible.
That was a thing.
The autographs and it was great.
So I don't mean to harp on Coach Dergs, but I want to go back to him for a second. Just because of my respect for him, and I know you do as well. Recently, and I'm probably pretty sure you were there when they recently named the gym floor after him. Were you there? And what was that experience like?
I was there. They did it twice. They did it in 21 and they did it again this year because the 21 crowd was restricted before COVID.
Okay.
And I was at the 21 year, and there were crowd limitations. Some of the basketball parents gave up their seats so that the players could go.
Really?
Cool. It was really cool.
That's cool.
So we were there, and he wrote a very nice letter to you about that, which I'm sure he did to everyone was there. It was really good to see. They played Anderson, and it was great. So Anderson and Chris Newton's a dear friend of mine.
Oh, he's a great guy.
He's one of the
best AD. He's one of the best ADs in the city.
And his just going off the right. Love him. And I'll tell you, Chris is. We talked about guys who love the kids and do it for the right reasons. Chris is top notch, and his youngest son Joey and my older son are the same age.
Okay.
And so Chris and I coached basketball for 4 or 5 years together, basically all the way up.
Is that right? That's cool.
It was a lot of fun, and so
anytime you get to spend time with Newt is the best.
That's great. So us two coaching, and and our two boys playing together, and it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's
cool.
And they won a few games together and learned to play the right way, I hope. And, Chris was a mentor for me too on coaching. So
his whole demeanor is something else.
It really is. He just was great. We do a game, be like, relax, coach. They're 9 years old.
Well, I watch him from the stands. Like if some parents get fired up about a ref call or something going on, and he comes over and instead of he'll put his arm around him and talk him off the cliff and get him to laugh, and everything's all good.
Yeah, absolutely. And he was great. And then with football, so I was coaching the boys, and every once in a while, because he was still coaching Anderson too.
Okay.
So he couldn't help coach, but he'd come to practice. And, and so what do you think? And he would give me ideas and drills, and it was just you love being around those people that coach for them.
Absolutely.
Sure.
That love the kids. And, and probably the best example of that, my boys had decided to go to St. X, surprisingly, and so they were looking for a basketball coach a couple of years ago, and I was talking to the AD. I'm like, look at these successful coaches. Pick out a Chris, or get X's football coach, or coaches at Elder, the Moeller basketball coach, Dan Fleming at LaSalle, all those guys. They love the kids and they love the school.
Right.
And you can see that, and the kids sense that.
Oh, there's no doubt about it.
And they'll play for you. They can tell the guy who's just there that, hey, I'm here so I can get the next job. This is a business like college. And
they're not invested.
The kids sense that, and and I look at all those successful teams, and there's always that comment.
I totally agree.
So they recently had a Hall of Fame ceremony, I believe, and one of your classmates, Pat Stricker, you talk about your roommate and everything, went into Hall of Fame. Well deserved for him as well.
I'm glad he got there, yes. And Pat was a tough player, and they had to move the date. The date was supposed to be March 31st, and so a few of us were already, our schedules lined up, and they had to move it for the speaker, Dan Ward, to match his schedule. So I was out of town, so I couldn't go, and I felt horrible.
Oh, you're kidding.
Oh, man.
And I talked to Pat ahead of time, wrote him a long letter of all my photographic memory events of all the things. Dad coaching him up because his dad was our basketball coach. And some of the plays that he had. He had a game against the old Forest Park, who was really talented. He was in your league. And
Alex Davis.
Yep. And so when we were seniors, we got down early. We were like 4-0 and ranked, and we get down 14-0 like that because they were athletic and good.
Right.
And Pat ended up in that game. I think he had 5 takeaways, but he got us right on the board right away. He gets a pick. And the next play, we threw a bomb and got a touchdown. And then the next possession on a punt, he goes down and blows up the guy, makes the fumble, and then recovers it. And then he had 3 picks in the game as well.
Wow.
So he had 5 takeaways. Yeah. So I said, look, Drew, I don't know what the record is, but I doubt someone's got 6.
That's awesome.
Wow. Yeah, so do you still live in Anderson?
Close. I just live right over kind of Eastgate, Milford. So,
okay.
Yeah. So
all right.
My kids went to IHM, and so I was the athletic director there for a while. I guess.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So the kids all went there, and
really,
my older daughter didn't play so many sports there. She was more of a soccer player outside of there. But my second one played basketball and volleyball. So I coached her, and then
well, talk about your kids and where they're at and what schools they went to.
Absolutely. So they went to IHM, and my girls decided to go to St. Ursula. And the oldest one I always knew. She was a soccer player, and her best friends, her little select team.
Right.
One of those kids' older sisters was on an Ursula State championship team.
Yeah, I would say they're really good.
Yeah, they were. They've fallen off a little bit here of late, I think. And but she saw them play in a state championship game when she was 8, so she was done right then.
That was it.
Yep. And then my second one went to. She was going to go to McNick till the last day and decided to go to Ursula.
Okay.
And she played basketball and lacrosse, and she played first couple of years. It was a good one for me when you realize your kids do what they're going to do. She played basketball as a freshman in varsity, and I'm excited. And after she got ready for sophomore year, she's like, Dad, I like it. I don't love it. And I don't love it enough to do what I need to do to get better, and so I'm not going to play. And so,
wow.
And so I didn't take that too.
That's a mature answer.
It was for her. Her father's response, if my wife were here, would tell you was not very mature. So she did that, but she played lacrosse, and actually they both played lacrosse together. The older one ended up being lacrosse captain.
Okay.
So one of my favorite pictures of them is those two together on the field.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, and so she went there, and then the older one is now a teacher in Fort Worth, Texas.
That's cool.
Really?
And
good.
She went to South Carolina. She went in the Teach for America program, which is kind of like Peace Corps.
Right.
So she's teaching at a nursery school, Daggett Elementary in Fort Worth, Texas, and she's bilingual, loves it. And
nice.
That's great.
Teacher of the year, and I was down there this weekend. I had to go down there to Dallas for work and got to see her, and she's really making a difference. So very proud of her.
That is great.
Yeah. And then
And your wife, is she from around here?
She went to Deer Park.
Okay.
And so we met after school. But she's heard all the high schools and has drug around all these ball games. And
so you got her come over here on this side.
She did. She came over. She does, thank goodness, like sports. So.
You said she does or doesn't?
She does. Good. She's learned a lot more about it. But I think on her first date, she told me, she goes, I know who Walt Chamberlain and Oscar Robinson are. I'm like, close enough, that'll work.
Walt Chamberlain.
That's great.
And Oscar Robinson. Close enough, that'll work.
That's hilarious.
You said so your boy too? You said
then my second one's a daughter. She just graduated from UC, and so just made me a grandparent. So she's here in town.
Oh, congrats.
Yeah, thank you.
That's great.
And then I have a third one who was a junior at Holy Cross in Massachusetts, and he's playing football.
Really?
Yeah, and so, and then my youngest, who's a freshman at Miami, going to school up there.
Hey, man.
So, yeah.
Good for you, man.
So
That's
both the boys won state championships in football at St. X. And
wow. How exciting is that for you as a parent?
It was really cool to get to see that.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was really cool for them and to see the rings.
They made up for Dad not getting it.
Absolutely.
That's
I told them I was over, and they got a very nice big ring.
Yeah,
that's so cool.
It was a lot of fun to see them both.
That's awesome.
And so the older one who's playing, he's had the injury bug, but hopefully he'll be healthy this year and get to see a few games.
I have to keep an eye out.
Yeah,
that's pretty cool.
Yeah, offline here, I'll show you. I've got a couple of you guys. His first college sack was against Syracuse when he was a freshman.
Really? That's pretty cool.
There you go.
So
do you get to go to many games?
Yes, we went to his freshman year. Actually, all of them except for, let's see, they played Syracuse. My wife's sister lives in Buffalo, so she went up, and it was on ACC Network. So that one I didn't go to. My wife did. The rest we did.
God, that's so cool.
It was fun, And so
that's fun.
It was kind of cool. It was crazy. We'd get out of St. X game late Friday night, and the first game was at Naval Academy, and my dad and I take off and drive from St. X from the youngest one game, and all night to get to Navy for the next one. But my father did that when I was a kid.
Yeah.
So that was
all the sacrifices, which is
really did when you talked about Anderson growing up, and I can remember, and I'm going off script here, but I was 10 years old, and my sister got married, and it was like the first game of the Soccer City tournament.
Okay.
And so, and luckily, it was just after the ceremony, so I'm not in any of the pictures. I was a little ring bearer kind of thing, and so, but right after the neighbors came up, who were on the team, grabbed me, my uniform, took off. And so we went down, and the game was down at Four Seasons, and the wedding reception was in Anderson, and so my sister got married at an old IHM church there.
Yeah.
And I look over the second half, and my dad's standing there in a tux with my uncle, and so he had my uncle sneak him out of the reception to come down and catch us.
Way.
Which my sister now knows. I think she did.
Yeah, that's awesome.
It's been now 40 years ago. And
Sure.
Then we were 11 or 12, and we had a soccer tournament in Toronto, Canada, and so we had a game at 8 o'clock Saturday morning. And he worked nights at GM and got off about midnight, and I look over 8 o'clock, and the old man standing there at kickoff. So he drove all night, and so I told my wife, I said, hey, just so you know, I told her this, that's normal to me.
Right.
So that's what you're going to get. So,
Yeah.
I think all of our dads.
Yeah, absolutely.
I remember my dad doing that.
Yeah.
His dad there for all
No
those.
question. Your brother, you had an older brother that was around a lot too, didn't you?
Yep.
I remember him being around because around coaching and around that stuff.
Yep.
I remember him.
Yep.
I remember your dad out. I remember your brother who
Mike.
up to people. Mike hit because
Mike out. Yeah, he would go. He could bat right and left and play. Well, he was in '83, so he was senior year after those guys left. Although great. Then my brother was his senior year. They had a pretty good team that year too.
And they had they had a good football team. They were really good in baseball. And you talked about growing up in Anderson as your brother. And I tell him this when I bumped into him to talk about this with you, is that you looked up to the older kids. And remember, he was on. So we're like 6 or 7 years old. And he was on this team, Connecticut General.
Yes, CG.
And they had uniforms with their names on the back. We had those scrubby ones like right outside. We had these flannels, no numbers. Said Tigers on the front. We loved them, but they had 2 jerseys.
Oh yeah, my dad,
big time, huh?
Yeah, a pinstripe one, and another one in jackets, and
they had the red fronts. My dad was the coach of that team.
And they were, and so that was really cool. Pete Rose switch hit, and so it was. You'd see those guys and like, I want to do that one day.
Yeah,
so talk about growing up in Anderson. You see guys like that, or Joe Dayton. It's like I want to be them when I'm 9.
Exactly.
When I'm 9, I want to be them when I'm 12. And when I'm 12, I want to be them when I'm playing varsity.
That's exactly what I was watching my brother play. Was that my brother was the one that got me to play sports, was because watching him, and then my dad being involved and seeing all that stuff. Like you said, I don't think I would have been into sports if it wasn't for my brother.
I remember your dad coming out and like hitting, for whatever reason, he was helping out our practice. We at the same time, and he was hitting the ball, and he was a little kid. He would hit these ones a mile, and you're like, wow. Because he had that little, did he have a little mustache from the 70s?
Yes, he did.
Told you I had a photograph of him.
So, real quick story about talking about our dads. So, my brother Brad, who I think you're talking about, he played baseball at Anderson. And
we just called him Big Ellis because he was always around. He was always around, just like Mike Thomas was always around. Kenny's older brother.
Yeah.
Those dudes were always around.
So one particular day, my dad had worked midnight, got off, he slept all day, and Brad had a game that, like 4 o'clock, whatever, at Anderson. Well, the field back then was terrible.
Yes, he played softball. Everybody played on that field.
Yeah, and so
softball on Friday nights.
So Dad, who had an old beat up Cadillac, went up to the Anderson field, took that fence that he used to drag the fields, tied it to his trunk, and drug the field, because Brad plays shortstop. And he drug the field, and the facilities guy for the district came out. He's like, "What are you doing?" And he's like, "Brad's got a game at 4 o'clock. I'm dragging the field to get the rocks out of here."
Absolutely.
It was awesome.
Yeah, that's the way it was back then. No, that is too cool. So we talked about some of the guys. Are you still real close to a lot of the guys that you played with?
Yeah, so try to be. Life is unfortunately pulls us all in different directions.
Families, yeah.
But yes, and actually, sometimes something bad can happen and make it something good. Is Gordy Mass is fighting cancer now.
Oh, he's not.
And so we got a text, which is odd because Gordy was the healthiest guy. I mean, Gordy was the guy who, well, I'm not eating McDonald's, I'm eating a turkey sandwich. He was that guy.
Right.
And even later into vitamins and very healthy. And so how does Gordy get cancer? But the flip side is if there's a stronger-willed person to fight that, I'd like to know. So maybe the Lord does give you what you can handle. So Gordy's doing very well, and our whole group was in a text group together, and so it started out with hey, good luck and good wishes, and then it would evolve into just like you guys were before online, giving each other a hard time. Ellis did this, and the coach was yelling at him. It's that stuff. So it's.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah, but we got about a month ago. We got, hey guys, I'm officially in remission.
Oh, good.
Yeah, so
that's great.
Doing well, and he sent a picture of his new shaved head. And we'd all joke about the texting is fun.
We talked about possibly trying to see if we can get him on. I'd love to have him
absolutely, and he'd be certainly a good one. He was a great, just a heck of a football player. Worked his tail off, ended up being an All-American at Dayton.
Yeah,
and
you said you still with Pat, obviously Pat Stricker. What about Ramey and some of those other guys?
Is still around town. I bumped into him now and then, and he had kind of stopped reffing. He officiated for a long time,
right?
And so he's still in town here. Keith Miller is out of town on basketball-wise. He's in California. The last night, so I've not talked to Keith in quite a while. Tim McLaughlin is still here in town.
Yeah, I see him every once in a while.
As we said, a lot of the football guys are all still here. Jim Williams is in Atlanta, but he's kind of the ringleader on the texts.
Is he?
Yeah, a couple of GA guys. Ronnie Robinson is in Minneapolis. So is Steve Flanagan.
Oh, wow.
And Bobby Byrne is still in town here.
Bobby's
boys played at McNick here. And
well, you talk about Timmy McLaughlin. His sister's married.
Yes. Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah,
Small world. Yes. So it was great. So we'd see Mrs. back at the grade school games. It was a lot of fun.
That's right.
To get to see her when my son and Joey were playing together.
That's right.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So let's talk about. We talked briefly about this, about giving some of your favorite memories. So let's give me a favorite high school memory. Is there one that sticks out, or is there too many to even get into?
That just in general that when the football team did really well, just that. To some degree, catching the support of the city, maybe because it was something new, and then in football we started to make that run. And as you all know, there was less of a distinction between classes then. I mean, now and then you could play the bigger schools. Now the small schools would play them all and get destroyed. But Moeller lost early, got upset early, so we were the only team left. So we kind of got maybe a little more attention.
Sure, yeah.
And we went. So that was just a lot of fun, and people coming out of the woodwork. And the ironic thing I can remember is coming in after one of the semifinal games. I guess we'd won, and there's these alums that are from like 20 years earlier.
Yeah.
And, hey, great job, guys! I graduated in '65, and you're a 17-year-old kid going, who are these old dudes? And now I look, that's like a lot younger than I am now compared to those people.
Exactly. Right. Isn't that something?
So Stricker and I were joking one time. We go, we used to call, when he couldn't hear us, we called Dergs the old man. And we go, he was about 10 years younger than we are right now. We were doing that.
Crazy.
And we called him the old man.
Yeah, we thought he was old then.
Yeah. So in basketball, what's the same way? When we got to that number one ranking, it was the first small school that did it. And we're beating all the GCL schools. And we had a big game over at Purcell. They was number 1 and number 2. And it was, Walt Mayer, the Grand Poobah was there. And they had a rope around the court. It was standing room only. It was really just a lot of fun.
That is cool. That is really cool.
Catching that eye. They was, I was still bumping the guys, Bobby Sagers and stuff that ref, and we'll talk about that era.
Yeah.
And it was a fun time to be a high school athlete.
Yeah.
And we're blessed and lucky to be a part of it.
What about college? Is there any particular one that sticks out in college?
Just it was. maybe as a senior getting through and being done and playing and having, a nice career and getting some awards and seeing some of your teammates get a shot in the NFL, it was certainly surprising, even if you go to small school, how good some guys are.
Yeah. And people don't realize that. Yeah.
And also what a commitment it is. You got to really, really love it.
And you were All-American.
The academic All-American. I was like All-Region and all that stuff. But but we had a couple of guys, who got NFL tryouts. Certainly not me, rightfully so. But I remember walking as a freshman, and there were like 17 guys benching 400. And I'm like, and so you'd get guys that had gone to big school and transferred out, or the guy who was 5'8" instead of 5'11",
right?
But he still ran a 4.4. You get people like that,
right?
Or you also get the overachievers who are just, as we all know, the tough guys, the Pete Rose type, who the only one that knows they're not an athlete,
right?
Or who doesn't know they're not an athlete is them, and they go do great things. And so you get a combination of folks like that that just love the game or have a talent, or maybe got in trouble, or didn't do well younger in academic. You need some guys that were 20 and flunked out, went to the Army, and come back, and they end up on your roster. And
that's still happening.
You can imagine. So
that's incredible. Did you have any favorite? I'm sure. You had two great coaches. Was not a favorite coach? Maybe a teacher? I don't know. Just what give me something. It doesn't matter.
You really did. You enjoyed those guys. You found people that cared. John Kirchkastner was a history teacher. Was a great guy, and they actually put him in the McNick Hall of Fame.
There you go.
He had coached quite a bit there. He cared about the kids. Taught them really well. He was an awful lot of fun. Kay Stefanix, we had a great English teacher, and I kind of write a lot of work, and I kind of give her credit for teaching me how to write a little bit. And so she was very nice in middle school. Jim Enright at Turpin was great. He was also our basketball coach.
That name sounds familiar.
Jim Enright. He was our science teacher in 6th grade, coached our 8th grade basketball team. He and I, Eric Dahlquist, Max Taney. We had a nice team.
Eric Dahlquist.
Yeah, I remember Eric Dahlquist.
Yeah. Didn't he move away?
He did, and he was a heck of a quarterback.
Yeah.
Kevin Huxtable was on that team.
Yeah.
And, Max Taney ended up moving away, but was a heck of an athlete. So we had a really nice team. We had a great rivalry in 8th grade with Anderson.
Oh yeah.
They had Jeff Hamilton and Randy and Billy Dayton.
Yeah.
And who was Steve Romero, Ty, of course.
Yeah.
So it was Joe Kelly actually went to Anderson for middle school. So we had a really big, the old Anderson gym jam.
Oh yeah.
Old Anderson gym.
That was a lot of fun. So I can remember kids like throwing on both sides, throwing those little Valentine Day hearts out and stuff on both teams. And so,
that is great stuff.
I just got hit with your guys, and it's your guys just hit me. So
and then we'll meet you at McDonald's.
Absolutely.
So just walk over.
So it was a lot of fun. And then if you got an extra $5 from your parents, you went across to the old La Rosa's too.
Oh yeah. You played Frogger going across.
Absolutely.
That's awesome. Well, I tell you what, Kurt, it's been awesome to catch up with you. I've been wanting to do this for a while, and Mike, my brother, finally kind of put this all together. So I appreciate Mike getting this. But what's more important for me is that he believes now that I actually hit the ball when I was little.
In the Forest Hill
and we got an actual article. So
show mom there and take a picture.
I see you in a new light now.
Thank you very much.
And I'll say it on here because I told you, Steve, I have since we'll be unofficially on the record, I'm pretty darn sure you went coast to coast for that bucket against us when I was against the number 1 rated team.
Well,
and we're going to find that tape. I think you went coast to coast.
I'll take it because that might be my only thing I'll take, but I'll take it.
I'm going to look at this video and see if he shot any free throws because he was really, really bad at free throws. So
I had a hurt arm.
Pitch. was not that bad.
There's one on that tape. I will make you look better than me because I'd hurt my arm in that state championship football game. I remember getting fouled and I couldn't get my wrist back. And so I pushed it and banked it, and you guys were all laughing at me, and I was pissed.
There we go.
I was mumbling at you guys a bunch of words I can't say on record here, but you guys.
I was cheering for you. I was on the bench. I was cheering for you.
Absolutely,
like good shot.
I'm sure I didn't say anything because I was too afraid I was going to get beat up.
But Hams had a dunk in that game, and we won. Keith Miller played real well that game, I recall.
Yeah.
But,
always great games.
Well, those are so fun because even if the teams were so much better than the other, the gyms were just packed.
Well, here's one thing I want to say though: is I obviously love a lot of the guys at McNick. We played against each other. Was that you hated them at the time, but afterwards, like we're doing now, the thing that I couldn't stand was the ROCKETS, ROCKTS. We are the that drove me nuts.
Absolutely.
That was the only I'm sorry, guys, from McNick. I know that they're watching this, but that thing.
Get it.
But that was the effect of being at McNick and playing in the gym and all that. You have all those big schools that do all that, right? And that was just
it was fun. You saw that and having that here and having you and us, Anderson Turpin, and the King of the Hill rivalry.
Right.
And that
just
banner you got to have.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And, I remember being a freshman, and I think I went, but Anderson was number one, but Turpin upset it. Remember Jimmy Laird's went like double overtime. And Jimmy had a big old heart, and Jimmy he believed in himself, and and he could rub people the wrong way, but it was great. He flat out play.
He could score.
Bet on himself. Him and Jay Taney, and Jay got hurt. It was Max's older brother, but there were some really good players coming out of here.
Oh yeah.
Oh, there's no doubt about it.
Those guys, and wow, and so
I mean, if you listed all the McNick, Anderson, Turpin people, it's phenomenal. It really is phenomenal.
It really is. You look at those, the youth programs are so good, and you get these people to look up to, and you go, man, I want to be that guy. The Wiesenhans had gone to McNick, and transferred from Turpin, and so I knew them. And your father played in the, for the Bearcats as a national championship ring, was an NBA guy.
Yep.
So there were people around who you're like, wow. So
pretty impressive.
It really was. It really was. So it was a great time to be a kid. All these businesses sponsored us. The Wix GF for the restaurant, and we were Lady Taylor, Lincoln Mercury for Larry and all those guys. And in fact, at Larry Bonanski's visitation, I found one of the trophies, and I told my wife, I feel like I should bring this almost, and I did, and I really wish I would have.
They would have loved
Mike, and so
they would have loved that.
It's just those guys. They love the kids, and they care, and they believed in you. They fire us all in their car, and in some big old Chevy, and run us out of the Reds game for Kid Glove game,
or go to convenient food mart to get the free ices and ice creams.
Old Earl would take us and take care. So it was just it was a great place to be a kid, and and we really couldn't get in that much trouble. So.
That's right. We didn't have the social media or the phones. We just wanted to play wiffle ball and wait for Mr. Softy to come around.
Absolutely.
That's exactly right.
And you could walk to some school and go play. Nobody kids ever do that. So you'd go out and shoot, or Steve even cut through to Sacred Heart and play.
That's right.
So it was just
great times.
It sure was. So I appreciate you giving me a chance.
Even that little park that you talked about at the very beginning, where we played E-League at. It's over there off of it's on the other side of Summit, where by Tony Bueller's.
Yes,
Rio Vista, isn't it? It was. You know what I'm talking about?
Yes, right behind it. Bueller's lived on it.
We thought that was like the biggest, best thing.
David Higgins, they had lived on the Yellow Glen, the little side one back there. Yeah, so
that was a great field.
Celestes lived there. Bueller's lived there.
Celestes.
And David Higgins lived up on the other end of it, and you had to walk out and go.
That was awesome.
Yep. So
now we appreciate you taking the time to join us. We really do. This has been really cool to catch up. And so hopefully we'll keep in touch. And
awesome.
We'll get together. We'll get Newt to go out with us. We'll talk some more stories. How about that?
Absolutely. Tell us all the bad coaching guys.
I doubt
Chris and I did in fourth grade basketball.
All right, so we're going to wrap it up here. So you've been watching This Week in Anderson. For Steve Ellis, Dan Albers, and Kirk Kiessling, you've been watching This Week in Anderson. We'll catch you next week.
Thanks, guys. That was fun.